Hello there and welcome to the new channel.
Here to help you see
The new you.
My name is Carmine Ortega.
Dennis Calamba.
This is Nato Agbayani.
My name is Juan Lu.
I'm Chino.
I'm Trisha.
This is Apple Manansala.
This is Attorney Carlo Ibanez.
This is Attorney Sheila Santiago.
This is Angie.
This is Orgami.
My name is Dante Salama.
This is Jesse Francis Rebustillo.
I'm Dania Cunha.
Mon Mendoza.
I am Mapet Erhino.
I'm Leo Bryan. Mike.
Nice for beer.
Sir Ian Barcelona.
Marvin Salazar. This is Sunny Haldons.
Heidi Lumainos.
This is Ivan Jude.
Patrick Geronimo.
Alan Perez.
My name is Erwin Ursua.
My name is Bob.
My name is Lloyd Luna and this is
Future.
The Talk.
Family Business.
The Puppet Stories.
After Shift.
PNC Town Hall.
YOLO.
Marketplace.
The Home Buyer.
HR Hotline.
Danny Art Show.
Hotline.
Foreign Affairs.
COVID Stories.
Awesome Day Show.
Thank you.
Money and more.
Cybernext.
Women at Work.
Win Within.
Port Project.
The Big Picture.
Sometimes life lets you down and you feel that you are done. You just want a morning run because the fun is all gone. But sometimes life makes you proud when you look far and wide, when you leave the pain behind and see the brighter side. TNC gives you inspiration. TNC reignites your passion. TNC starts your transformation. TNC helps you see the new you. Sometimes life makes you blind and you choose something bad. You just wanna cry and hide and save your face from the crowd. But sometimes life makes you see the beauty in you and me. When you look up above, there is God and there is love. TNC gives you inspiration. TNC reignites your passion. TNC starts your transformation. TNC helps you see the new. We're here to help you see the newness of life. We're here to help you feel your hope is so real. You got the power to see. We'll help you see the new you. TNC gives you inspiration. TNC reignites your passion. TNC starts your transformation. TNC helps you see the new you.
The new channel. The new channel. The views, opinions, and insights expressed in the following show are those of the hosts, producers, guests, and viewers. They do not necessarily reflect the position of the channel. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the new channel, here to help you see the new you. This is Jesse Francis Rebustillo, your host to this wonderful program, the HR Hotline. This is a wonderful day. If you look that my face is a little bit oily because I woke up early at 8:30. I was already on camera and I was running a webinar on succession planning. And it's so engaging. I have 30 participants, and these are actually coming from senior level executives in key companies. And they love it because my introduction is more on the mindset. It's not just the easy fix that you're going to run or implement a succession plan or just a replacement plan. I was emphatically endorsing that they must have a succession management and, of course, the culture first, the mindset first, and the requirements that they have to be competency based, and then a lot of things before you venture into any HR program. You must make sure that you're ready doing it because it's already integrated. It has to be strategic, following the elements of talent management, the process of talent management. So I love it. And you know how I do it? Um, it's interactive. It's interactive, and I like talking with people. How I miss the face to face, but I love doing it. The reason why I started this little story of what I did earlier, it's because that is actually what we're going to do. Our topic for our episode today. It's actually on good leadership practices. How do we ensure that the programs that we are implementing, running, are actually based on practices? I was learning when I was chatting with our esteemed guest. I agree. There is a difference between a program and a practice. Am I right? Yes. And that is what I was doing earlier. Trying first to put into their mindsets that you cannot just run programs if your other hand is actually doing a different thing from your left hand. And how can we make sure? I started our conversation by telling him about assessment. And he taught me, and that is our relationship, that if it's not just mere assessment, it is just not just a mere review on what you do. And I agree. For those who are going to watch us, viewing us, I agree. There are a lot of activities, programs that you implement, but you may not be even sure if that's appreciated for one. What is the result? Two, of course, input, but the output, the outcome, the impact. Now, the pandemic, our being in a bubble, our distance arrangements surfaced, actually squeezed in our lapses, our weaknesses. I was telling my class earlier, the reason why we're many and you're so keen with succession plan, because management now know, accept it, it may include me and you, that they can see, they can glean of our deficiencies. Some are not really competent with this new arrangement, and this is it. This is the future. You don't base programs from the past, a succession plan based on your current competencies, but competencies in the future. So that is the positivity of this pandemic. We realize that there is a need for us to look into this. But that is for leadership development, that is for succession planning. But let us go back to the base. How can we really ensure the difference between people leadership and people management? We have invited a friend of mine. I call him a friend, and he knows it, and I can claim it that I am his friend. You know, a friend is somebody who is with you when you are in the lowest. And I can still remember I was there. Not hand holding, but just the presence. Because I am a friend. I am not a fair weather friend. So that is the first intro that I will use. He is a dear friend. Quality time. We don't actually meet as much as we can, but I know it's my Lola who taught me this. I mentioned that to be selective with friends, and I can count. I have BFFs. I have friends, and you choose one, a person yung nahulugan ng loob. You fell in love with, and he is. And sometimes I'm at awe. He is actually the president of PSTD in 1986 and a VP in 1995. I was later also the president of PSTD. For the longest time in PMAP, when I started to be active, he was the executive director. That's why we became friends. Because, you know, I look so, not ugly, I look so provinciano before because I was actually, though I graduated from Ateneo graduate schools. But of course, when you're going up the ladder, but I can feel that this guy accepted me and embraced me who I am. That's why I also look at him as a friend. And there were times that we are seated together from the mundane of chismes down to something that is deep. How we talk about things. It was just like a tortilla between Jose Rizal. He is a chairman of the Civil Service Commission Certifying Board of Prime HR and a professor of MBA at Southville. Nako, Southville is also inviting me, but I don't have time really. That reminds me, I have to call. Marl is not anymore with Southville, but I think it's Din Diamante. Then 30 years in HR. He is actually an OD person, a leadership person, an HRM person. And one thing, you know, I believe in the Desiderata. There is a person greater and lesser than you are. Our guest is somebody who is greater than I am. I can still recall there was a time that he was a speaker. It was not lengthy. TED Talk was not yet practiced before. He gave a presentation in PMAP, that's the People Management Association of the Philippines. In less than 30 minutes, I think it was just 15, 20 minutes. I was moving around the stage, telling us things, and I was floored and out. Perfect. A perfect speaker who can really extend eloquent, an expert, very ethical, but can extend. Because I learned he's the past president of PMAP 2 years ago, and he's very much involved as the Chief Engagement Officer of the Investors in People. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome my dear friend, Gerry Plana, DPM. Yes.
Hi, Jesse. Hi, Jesse. How are you?
Fine, fine. Actually, Gerry, you are in my list since the first season. But I know you were very busy. I've been trying twice. I texted you, but you were also busy. So this is actually a wonderful day that you are here with us in HR Hotline. I would like also to greet Olin Lee. Is so Nathaniel Manchero of PSTD. I know Grace. Grace is here. Tonette, Attorney Tonette Aliones is watching us. Hello, mom. Hello, mom. And then a lot of our friends, Ruel, they're coming in. So let us start our little conversation here. Okay. Pero Gerry, what makes you busy now?
Well, it's still the same, Jesse. It's still a lot of investors in people work, especially with the lockdown. The funny thing about this pandemic is you even got busier working at home than you did before, because it's really one meeting after the other.
Yes, and you have to be focused on your laptop.
That's right. Yes, yeah.
The problem now it's the work-life integration. They thought that you are working at home, it's a vacation, but it's not. It's actually a challenge to
the definition of work-life integration is you are living a more balanced life now because you have time for everything. You have time for enough sleep. You have time for exercise. Because you've really reduced a lot of your time wasted for travel. And you have put them into more valuable use, like more time for exercise or more time for sleep or more family time and so on and so forth.
But it is difficult when you are actually facing your camera or your laptop and trying to do multitask. You really have to be concentrated.
Yes. And the kind of adjustment we're making here in this new normal is we are not able to move too much while we're talking, unlike when we're on stage, Jesse.
Yes.
I think if you're used to moving a lot, I think this is a little constraining when you're doing it virtually.
Yes. Anyway, during our chat, you mentioned you were teaching me. You mentioned that there is a big difference between a practice and a program, because we selected that our topic will be good leadership practices. Then your next statement was there is a difference between practice and program. Tell us, share it with us, Gerry. What is that difference between practice and program, and how does it connect on what we are doing?
Another way of looking at us, the way we work in investors in people, is we like to consider ourselves as good practice consultants, because that is the focus of our discipline, trying to search for good practices and sharing those good practices. So the difference is practice is more associated with the leader's behavior, what he or she actually does, while a program is more comprised of systems and procedures. These are very much the difference between an HR program, where there's a lot of systems and processes, and what a leader actually does, which is practice, which generates an employee experience. So sometimes,
So tama yung sinabi ko na sometimes you have a very nicely written or thought of program, but if the leader is not actually practicing it, there will be a disconnect. Am I right, Gerry?
That's right. You are very right there, because sometimes just because we have a program does not mean that we can generate the desired practices. That's why when we launch a program, I think we have to have a system of continuously assessing whether the practices are consistent with the program. Because sometimes we have this illusion that just because we have completed the program, launched a program, that everything will just fall into its proper place, which does not necessarily happen. There's a big disconnect between program and practice.
Yes. So that is what investors in people do to
Yes.
make the difference between people leadership and people management. Am I right?
No, that's right.
Can
But
you-
of course, the programs can help practices. No,
Of
sometimes
course,
you
of
need
course.
sometimes you need a program to propagate the practice, but the practice by itself does not need a program for it to happen.
Okay. Okay. So tell us about the difference now with leadership and management.
Oh,
And we're
there's a
talking
big difference. There's a big difference between the two. Once upon a time, I thought they were interchangeable. But it was a young person way back many years ago that
perception.
that educated me about the difference between management and leadership. That's why I don't want to use the word management for people, because this young man told me, I want to be led, I don't want to be managed. When I probed deeper, I asked, what's the difference to you about these two words? And he told me, because when I manage, I don't feel like I am a human being. And true
Right.
enough, when we use the word manage, it's really for things like I'm managing my cash flow, I'm managing the facilities. But when we refer to people, we have to use the word leadership, because that is where we really treat people as human beings. That's a big difference.
Now, how will be able to? Is there an intervention that you can tell us so that organizations may be able to appreciate this big difference? Because I can appreciate it now. There is really a big disconnect, and this is more on behavior.
That's right. And sometimes when we take a look at our competencies that we develop in organizations, sometimes one of the things that we need to examine, first of all, are these management competencies or leadership competencies?
Right.
Sometimes because if you don't know the difference, we might be over managing and under leading the organization, which is usually the case. There's a lot of focus on controls. Control is the word that is central to management, and empowerment and autonomy is more central to the leadership language.
Okay. Before we continue with that, let me read. So over here, that is Roel. Good to see you both, Jesse and Gerry. Pearly Mangkoy is here. Maribel Aglipay. So I agree with the statement that a practice and program are two different things. Yes, Ma'am Maribel. And of course, my kababayan Cho Lita is Plana. Oh, a lot of our friends are watching us, Gerry. So let us continue. So what is the intervention? What does let me spot it on. So what does investors and people do? What are the intervention that we must learn so that we can appreciate the difference?
Okay, we understand, we realize in investors and people that for you to transform an organization, you need to undertake a journey. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. So organizations that get into this system really undertake a journey for continuing improvement in the area of people leadership. Okay. And I think one of the distinguishing things here is we use an international standard as a benchmark tool.
Okay.
So,
Before you go into that, I just want to make it so it's a journey. So
it's a journey. Yes.
It's not a quick fix. So if you can give us a time frame, so what is the average time that you undertake the journey?
Okay. Based on our experience, just a few months really, because the journey is simply saying if you get the beginning of the journey, you get baseline. You get a baseline survey where you are in the standard. So you know where you are and what you need to do to improve. So
Who
you
does
get
that?
early.
Who does that? Who does that, Gerry? I'm excited. Who does that?
With our help, we engage. It's a survey that makes the organization benchmark quickly with the international standard of good practice.
That's what
So
you call it. I mean, is that what you call an inventory?
Yes, what's your baseline on these practices?
Okay.
Because we have a slew of good practices that are research based on what high performing organizations are doing. You get benchmark immediately as an early part of the journey, so you know exactly what you need to do to improve in your
Okay.
people leadership practices.
Jerry, let us make it clear. But these are practices and leadership, not the program. It's not a program review. Make it clear to us.
Yes,
Is
yes,
it
yes. It's practices. It's practices. It's what leaders should be doing. It's how leaders should be behaving specifically in their own units.
ay nakita ko na. So that is the difference. Because
That's right.
people sometimes people, they will, parang quick fix, they go into the program right away.
That's
No.
right.
I
That's right. Oh,
see.
let me tell you another thing, Jesse. The difference here is what HR does is an HR program. The line managers should be able to do a people strategy, which is more practices
Right,
focused. That's a big difference. You know, it's like the difference between ground troops and Air Force.
right,
Like
right.
HR programs are like the Air Force, but you need a ground troop strategy for what exactly will this leader do in his or her team that will make a difference in employee experiences.
Now, we still have time. Now, tell us about the journey. Sorry for interrupting you earlier. So, what are these interventions that you do with
So,
that it's coming from IIP?
okay, so basically the baseline is a very important first big step, you know, because that's where the organization can find out where I need to plan for. What am I good at and what I need to plan for. And there's a lot of planning after the survey. There's some planning and there's some training for understanding the standard for in-house champions and the leaders, you know. And they go through several months of just implementing the plans until they are ready for an assessment for accreditation purposes, so that they know exactly where they are. Are they in the silver category and the gold in the platinum? Because there are several levels of accreditation, so that this is good feedback for them where they are as far as the standard is concerned. And
So
that
that
all takes within less than a year. No?
so the first thing to do is they have to implement things based on a standard.
Yes, yes, that's right. So here you have a North Star. You know exactly you know what you want, what you need to change. It's not something that's a blind spot. So because the standards are pretty clear cut in terms of what you need to do and not do, so this serves as a guide throughout your journey for excellence.
Who determines that transformation?
Who
Because
determines the transformation?
you told us there is a baseline, then there are
Yes,
some teaching and some training, and then they
yes,
do it
yes.
before the
Yeah.
the assessment. Who determines their transformation that they can feel that they are ready for an
That
assessment?
the client is we facilitate this processes, we facilitate the planning processes, but we use a model which is we call the pathways to agility now. You know,
Can you share that to us? Is it okay to
yeah,
share that?
sure, 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 sure.
Oh,
So
please do.
like for instance, there are 7 pathways, and these are all part of the journey. Like for instance, the pathway of profit to purpose. Okay, is the organization more profit oriented or purpose oriented?
Right, right.
Okay, so this is a pathway, because more and more research is saying that the more purpose driven the organization is, the more profitable they become. That's the paradox, no? That's why you need to move organizations to become more even purpose driven. And we define purpose as taking care of all the stakeholders, because profit only takes care of the shareholders. So this is where in what area in the continuum in the journey is this organization in? Do they still need to do something so that they can move further to become even more purpose driven? So that's an
I,
example of one pathway and how we guide organizations to become better in that pathway.
I'm just curious, Jerry. What are the interventions aside from training? Because this is
Uh, yeah,
mindsetting,
yeah, that's
mindsetting
right. It's
from
really
the top
yeah.
down to the rank and file.
So if you're an investors in people practitioner like myself, and I'm only one of the 9, we have 9 in the Philippines, you get involved in planning, facilitating a planning process so that they will know exactly what they need to do. You will get involved in training, some form of training. You will get involved in assessing, in some coaching and consulting. all throughout the journey. The journey will require you to play different roles so that the organization is helped in its transformation journey.
Can you share with us a what do you call that? A eureka, a moment wherein a person in the rank and file actually feels that he has transformed the pathway that you gave us earlier?
Probably, let me share with you some good practices that we have discovered.
Okay, okay,
Like
okay.
for instance, like for instance, in that pathway, we call that pathway the main focus pathway from profit to purpose. For instance, that one. Some of the good practices we see there are leaders trying to give life to their vision and mission. Usually, we have vision and missions. Organizations have them, but seldom do organizations give life to those. They don't even talk
Right,
about it after
right,
it's written. you know.
right.
So the good practice is you put life into that. Like they make vision speeches and purpose speeches. They include that in their meetings. And things like that. So when they talk about targets, they just don't talk about the numbers. They correlate that with the purpose. Things like that are good practices that we saw in that particular pathway, which can bring an organization to become even more purpose driven.
I see. You mentioned seven, so this is just one. Can you just
Yeah,
share?
this is one. I'll give you another one. Another one is as far as leadership style is concerned, from controlling to empowering. That's kind of hard. Like for instance, this work from home phenomenon that we all got into as a result of the pandemic, I think was a struggle for many managers to give up being controlling and start empowering people.
Right.
That was the struggle there. And many were not able to adjust quickly because they felt they were losing control. They could not see the people working. They needed to count the hours and things like that. So there was a lot of anxiety as a result of that. But we need to empower people. I think that's the way to go, really. What the pandemic did and work from home is it just accelerated that process.
Okay, let us make it a little bit uh, in detail. So the program it might be can be the performance management, but the practice is from controlling to empowering. Am I right, Jerry? So
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah.
what 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 are the interventions? What do investors and people do to make that possible? That am I using the right term? Transformation, the change
Yes.
from the practice. What do you do? Say I am a person who is very much akin to evaluation, to performance management, but now we are in a pandemic, and then you're telling us that it has to be empowerment. So what are the things that you're going to intervene to me so that I will change?
Okay.
Anong
Let's talk about that because that's another pathway. The one you mentioned, performance management, is another pathway,
oh, I
and
see.
the shift is this. This is the shift. Is from very measurement oriented performance to more improvement oriented performance. If you
Oh,
notice, we are so obsessed with so much measurements that sometimes it kills the ability to perform better. And that is what's wrong with current traditional performance management systems. There's so much emphasis on measurement. So if you want to unleash performance, I think we need to institute certain practices like regular check-ins.
yeah.
Regular conversations. Sometimes you don't wait for 1 year or every 6 months they have to have a performance conversation. And that regular check-in is not just about performance; it's also about potentials. You're talking about succession. Succession is not just for a few high posts. It's for everyone. Everyone's got potentials that need to be discussed, and careers aspirations need to be discussed. That needs to be an ongoing conversation. That is good practice along that pathway that will be responsible for more performance improvements.
How do you do that? Is it a self-led transformation, or you are consultants and you tell them this is
Okay.
what you're going to do?
Okay.
Ay, sorry, ang kulit ko Jerry, so that it will be
Okay, no
appreciated.
problem. No problem. There are two things that need to be done. We're not saying that program is not good and practice is better. We're saying we need both, but we need to differentiate the two. So what happens in terms of interventions from an investors in people perspective is we hit both angles really. We get the leaders to practice to undertake new practices that are consistent more with the good practice. Like for instance, I'll give you an example here. Like in the area of change, sometimes there is this very basic. Before you introduce change, you need to communicate the change. It's very basic, isn't it? But sometimes, based on current practice, the change is introduced first before it's communicated. You
Right.
know, so sometimes it's as basic as that, but it can be very powerful. So the leaders need to have a people strategy, meaning to say, what are the practices I need to apply so that it's consistent with good practice and I can enhance employee experience. From the HR side, we need to come up what sort of programs do we need to implement so that those practices are supported.
I
So
see.
that's where the distinction comes in. So there are really two kinds of interventions: from a corporate level programs and from an individual leader perspective. What are the practices you're willing to do? Like for instance, I'll give you one simple practice. If you want people to participate in the discussions, one simple good practice is be the last to speak.
Oo nga.
Diba? I mean, sometimes because if the leaders start speaking, say, we have a problem here and this is what I think, everybody will say, okay, we think the same way. But if you want to have independent thinking in the group, then probably you should be the last to speak. Hear them out first. And that's in that way, you can really get the true sentiments of your team. It's a very simple thing, but it's a practice, isn't it?
Yun nga. I would like to know how do you surface that? How do you squeeze that? Is
Oh,
there an
survey.
FGD,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
survey, an
yeah,
FGD survey,
yeah,
or what?
yeah, yeah.
How do you
Our our
what do you
assessment.
do?
Our assessment strategy is we interview people. We have a survey. So we have a quantitative, qualitative. We observe some activities and we examine some existing documents. So that's the different sources of data that will say you're doing something good here or you're doing something here, but can still be improved.
But you know, Jerry, it will take time for an assessor. You have
Yes.
to really you have to
Oh,
immerse. You have to immerse so that you will know
the assessor, I'll tell you something, Jesse. When we get into our organization, an assessor probably interviews 100 people.
Oh my God.
That's how deep the assessment is. Interviews 80 to 100 people, collects this qualitative data, gets the quantitative data, gets the observation data, and then composes a report which is insightful. Meaning to say it's not just the data collected, but what is the data telling us, and how can this organization even become better moving forward?
Correct me, Jerry, because it's so difficult really to assess and determine practice for programs. Yes, because you have outputs and results, but it's a practice. It's actually something that is how do you really assess it when it's a
How do
practice?
you
Tell
assess?
us.
How do you assess practice? You have to ask the people who are impacted by the practice, the employees.
Oo nga. Oo
Isn't it?
nga.
Isn't it? Oh, ganon. So, and that's part of the interview process, isn't it? When you say, is your manager giving you an opportunity to hear your views? Oh, when you ask the manager, are you giving opportunities for people to hear their views? The manager sometimes will say yes. Yeah, of course I do that. But when you get to the employees and you ask the same question, they say no. So here you have a disconnect. So that means to say that's where the good practice is not being done. Okay? And we collect all this data and then we say, yes, you're doing this and this is good practice and this one you can still improve. That's why in the process of doing our assessment work, we're exposed to a lot of good practices of companies. We
Okay.
have seen a lot of good practices.
Friend Jerry, PP Obet is watching, Mark Hernandez is watching. Ang dami na nanonood.
Okay.
Now, kukulit ulit ako. So after that you learn that there is that problem, how do you now intervene and tell them that they must do or improve their practice? Sige nga,
How?
Jerry. How?
How? Well, the survey will say a lot, isn't it? Like if the survey says that you're not inspiring your people through your vision and mission.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as that. So probably the intervention, how can you inspire? How can you make your leaders more inspiring by communicating the vision mission, for instance? Okay, so
Oh.
that's one example. Some people will say we're not very innovative because we don't have an opportunity to voice out our opinions. Okay, so how can you create that situation now? That's where the practices are built, and these are the new commitments of leaders that they do as a result of the survey, so that they can improve their own employee experiences.
Jerry, you mentioned 7 earlier.
Seven, yes.
What is the most difficult pathway for transformation?
Yung number one that I mentioned, the profit to purpose. Because
Oh,
a lot of organizations are still really hooked into they can't see the paradox. Okay, this is a paradox that the more purpose driven you are, the more profitable you become.
I see.
Very few businesses can easily accept that, but a
It's a
lot of
paradox because
yes.
it's a paradox.
Oh yeah, because to many it's an either or. If I go for profit, I should eliminate purpose. I will not go for purpose. I just go for profit. It's paradox. A lot of paradoxes need to be managed as the environment becomes even more complex. Like
Okay.
the paradox of the manager and the leader. The more power you give, the more powerful you become. That's the paradox of empowerment. Okay.
Oh,
So these are the things that the tensions and the paradoxes that we need to deal with as the situation even becomes more chaotic and complex as we move into the future.
yeah. Okay, Jerry, when you really talk with somebody, it's an engaging conversation. We lack time. Let's have the first break. When we come back, I would like to ask you that is there a pathway on learning and development?
Yes.
Yeah. And then tell us also who among the companies in organizations in the Philippines who are already what do you call this IIP certified. Okay.
Okay.
So okay, let's have first the break. Sorry, Derek. Derek, can we have that uh, poster wherein I'm supposed to invite people to watch shows in TNC? Yes, just log on or visit the page of the new channel. You can watch programs, shows from the big picture down to mental shift. And this is the best alternative, the best option because you can use your gadgets. Even if I'm gardening, I can follow shows and watch it. Let's go back to Jerry. Jerry, this early, I'm telling you that you will be my guest 2 weeks from now because I would like to please have time with me because I haven't asked you about leadership and about things that I'm very sure it's your mastery. Now let's go back. So is there a pathway for learning and development or training?
Yes, yes, there is. It's called, the title is called capability, organization capability. And the shift is from being present oriented to future oriented. So that's
Right.
that is a present, or are you present oriented or future oriented? Why is
And
future oriented superior,
you're
for instance? Yeah.
you're spotting on the trainers or the one in the
Yes.
learning and development. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Very
yeah.
good.
Because sometimes the problem with capability building is sometimes you're just focused on the present, but it takes time to build skills and capability. That's why we need to look at the future. So the good practice here, Jesse, is you should have a foresight in terms of what are the future skills that are needed, and you start building them now.
You know, Jerry,
Okay.
that was a question in one of the conferences. And then, I was answering it. I with Femery is watching us, and it would like to greet you, Femery, and then Pipi Obet, and then Lynn Espinosa. The question was, what is the future of training? And I was answering, I was chatting with Femery. The answer is actually on the trainers now, and that is what I was espousing. It's actually you don't base it for your present competencies, but you base it on the future competencies. And you must
That's right.
the future is actually you're training it now so that we can be future proof.
That's right.
Your
Especially
organization.
now, Jesse, when we have a lot of conversations about AI and robotics, how will the future work change, and what kinds of new skills are needed to be built? Start building now. Probably more of the human skills, the cognitive and human skills, rather than the repetitive and transactional skills. Things like that, because it takes time to build on these skills and capability.
Yes, yes, right. Is there any other pathway that we missed? Yeah, you're saying.
Uh, No, I just wanted to say the other important piece in this pathway of capability building is the word potential, Jesse. Well, you just did your own succession management training
Yes,
in ECOP, but the problem with potential is there is very little conversation we're having about potential on a wide scale basis in organizations. But if you come to think of it, potential is even more important than performance, because
right.
potential is about the future. It's about your future performance. Remember, we
Not
need to
all
respect people.
bookkeepers, not all bookkeepers can be good accountant. Not all good salespeople can be good sales manager. So the
Precisely.
performance is not actually the evaluation of your performance may not really mean something later on.
Performance is the past. So if
Yeah.
we're trying to move into the future, potential is the key word. And sometimes, when we in the area of rewards, or rewards, which is another pathway, we need to even reward even potential, because that's our future. It's not just about the past. So we must have a good balance of everything.
Again, magiging makulit ako. So what is your intervention if you see somebody who has potential? So what is the program or the intervention that you're going to do?
Well, the whole intervention of investors in people is really unleashing all those potentials, because the basic premise of many workplaces these days is there's a lot of restrictiveness. People are not free to really grow and unleash their power. So that in itself is the whole point of why we want to change workplaces, make them more humane, make them more liberating, so that people can truly fully express themselves, and be their better version of themselves.
So that means that it's integrated with the first pathway that you were mentioning, the
Yes,
empowerment.
yes, everything is integrated. They're not standalones. The empowerment pathway, the purpose pathway, the performance improvement pathway. There's the capability pathway. They're all integrated. That's why when we assess this, we integrate all of that, and then we come up with continuing report. No, that's why it's a journey. Even you get assessed, there's something that you still need to work on to continuously improve until you get recertified again at a certain time. So it's a continuous process of continuously improving the organization towards transformation.
Okay. But it's a journey again, and there
Yes,
there is and there is that time wherein you are going to be assessed and then determine on what level, what do you call that? What
the level accreditation levels.
accredited festivals that you are in. And what are these,
That's
Gerry?
right.
What are they?
These are the first level is accreditation. You're accredited. Then there's the silver level, the gold, and the platinum. If you take a look at this as an OD intervention, the entire thing, assessment is part of the intervention, Jesse.
Right.
It's part of the intervention because when people are assessed, they work towards it. They
But
know
it,
they can.
but it needs a lot of mindset because sometimes when you're evaluated, you're being assessed, you feel so a little bit off. You don't
Yes,
really like it. But if
yes.
assessment is an intervention, it's a change of mindset that they have to appreciate that they're being assessed, they're transforming. Am I right, Jerry?
That's right. That's right. That's right. And there are some clients that even say, please assess us really honestly, because we really honestly
Oh,
want to improve.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
we want you to be truthful to us. Do not hide anything. And you say that's precisely what we're going to do because we like you to improve.
But Jerry, you have a standard. You just
Yes,
don't assess without basing it on a standard. Am
we
I right?
base it on an international standard. Yes, that's the difference. There's a benchmark standard.
Eh, di ba ka
Okay.
mahirap naman? We are Pinoy. It's not that I'm trying to discount the Pinoy. It's an international standard. Can we really catch up with the standard? What are
Yes,
your thoughts on this?
world class. Standard is like a principle and a tactic. Like they are universal. Okay, but how the standard is applied can vary from local to local. So, like you have the principles of nutrition. They're the same whether you're feeding a 60-year-old or a 6-month-old baby. But the way you apply the principles of nutrition will vary from each case. But you apply the same standard, the same principle.
Wait, Jerry, you're really teaching me. I'm learning a lot from you. See, Espinosa is taking notes. Now, tell us, because we have time, you really have to come back. Can you just select top five of those na may standard? You start with the bronze. Next, it's the what's that? Silver.
No, there's no bronze. Accredited, then silver, gold, and
Okay.
platinum.
Can you give us two na nag-silver sa Filipino organization? Silver.
I'm not sure exactly because there are about more than 50 companies already who are accredited.
What comes into
Uh, like I'll just name a few. Like Bounty, Agro Bounty is a gold, gold awardee. Taskas is platinum. One of the very few platinum. Global Business Power is accredited. So they come in varying in the degrees. Watson's is I think silver. Okay. Watson's, these are some of the companies that are using the standard and are accredited at different levels.
I remember before there was a school, Lyceum ba yun?
Yeah, Lyceum still accredited right now. Still, all
How
the
about
Lyceum.
yung hospital is St. Luke's.
St. Luke's and Cardinal Santos. Yeah, the one that was headed by Pilar Almira.
My question is it confidential if you tell me what is actually the lip? Say for Cardinal Santos, what is actually the lip when you assess them and they're accredited as one? What is the lip from to? Can you tell us?
Well, I don't have the specifics, but probably you need to ask that from Pilar. Pilar is. I know you interviewed Pilar here, but Pilar always says investors in people has done a lot for the Cardinal Santos. That's always her refrain. Yeah, because a lot of this, if you fix the people issues, Jesse, you definitely will improve your performance and your profitability.
Right.
Because there's a lot of wastage by not having a systematic way of really handling the people side of the business. There's a lot of waste and costs. People issues are very costly, Jesse. People problems are costly. Yeah.
Of course. And it's not just the bads that they are accredited as one. It's actually the gains that they get when they are assessed. Am I right, Jerry?
Oh yes. The badge is just an icing on the cake, really. But I think the real value is how they have transformed as they undertake the journey. And one thing about the journey, if organizations get on the journey, we have a community where all of them talk to each other more regularly, so they're able to even multiply themselves, exchange ideas among themselves. So we have that community of continuously exchanging their own good practices to each other. So they continue to even build further on what they've started.
Real, ang oras natin kulang. It's only the episode is only for an hour. Before you give your parting message, can I ask you, ito pwedeng lengthily, what are some examples of good people leadership practices? So that those watching us, si Pipi Obet, si Femery, si Owi, at si Maribel.
Okay.
What are
Okay.
these? What are just tell us in
Just a
random.
few.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just a few. Like for instance, in the area of values, we've seen good practice in terms of one organization doing what they call values moments. So every time they have a meeting, they have these few minutes of just talking about the values. Kasi kung minsan, di ba, the values are displayed, but it has no life. So they tell a story how they practice the value, let's say within the week. Or they some organizations even have value awards, values champions awards. They reward people for exhibiting the values, and so on and so forth. So these are very good practices in the area of values. In the area of empowerment leadership, the good practice is the clarity of the decisions that people can make regarding their jobs. So there's a lot of conversation along what kinds of decisions can you make in the performance of your job, which usually is not a conversation that happens even as we set KPIs or targets or things like that. But inclusion of that becomes very important because it empowers people not to just go on back and forth to you seeking for approval for many of the things that one is doing. I mentioned about the change. You communicate the change first before you change, and then when the change is ongoing, track the accomplishments and continue to communicate that, because you can easily lose the change if it's not communicated. Like having early sense of progress, like early celebrations for victories, is a good practice, because the celebration itself is the thing that gives more motivation for people to proceed and further undertake the journey towards the achievement of their goal. Things like that. These are, the total good practice template, Jesse, is about 108 in the standards. Arranged systematically and organized in a way
I know you shared
right.
I know you shared that to me. You gave me a template before. I thank you for that. But Jerry, before your parting message, I would like to I'm just a little bit curious. Not the bads, but actually the how they practice it. Is there a criteria for somebody, or when is the best time that you have to start? Is that, are you going to wait that there is a problem, there is a behavioral problem, or can a small company of 50, or can a big company of around 10,000? What is the criteria? When is the best time that you venture that journey with investors in people?
I think the earlier you do it, the better, because this is really foundational. This is your culture formation, isn't it? So and culture is very important for sustaining the strategy, isn't it? So the earlier you do it, even if it's preventive, even if you don't have problems, you want to improve. As a matter of fact, the organizations that get into investors and people are passionate about excellence. They want to be high performing organizations. That's their passion, and that's why this is not for all organizations. It's only for the organization who are passionate about excellence.
Right. That you nailed it. You nailed it. You nailed it. So a lot of people would like to there is the desire to be excellent. So if you have that, and if you feel that way, then go into that journey.
Right? Yes.
Can we have your parting message, Gerry, because you're already over time?
Okay. Just a few words, just to parting message. I'd like to take a look at this pandemic that we experience as just a big wake-up call. It's a wake-up call to all of us that we indeed truly live in a highly disruptive environment, and this is not going to be the last time we'll experience disruption. So I think the challenge is really taking our culture transformation more seriously. I think we need to really couple this with our development of our business strategies, because the two really work hand in hand. What good is a brilliant strategy if your culture is not supporting it? And from there, I think the HR needs to undertake a new role, and that role I call an organization transformation partner. We need to help our CEOs plot a transformation journey and help them in that journey, because that is truly the way to build a strong culture. So I'd like to end by saying that if you want your organization to last in this environment, let's build an organization that are built to change. And I'd like to use these parting words. The secret to organizational success is not in predicting the future. The secret is in building an organization that can thrive in a future that cannot be predicted. Thank you, Jesse.
Wow, perfect. In God's time, that is why we have Gerry at this time. Now that we are actually starting to bounce forward, that strong words, yes, I I am going to share it. This is the right time for organizations because there was a summit just 2 weeks ago on transformation. A lot of speakers are telling us telling us about that. But how do we start? And Gerry is right. We have to be partners. Actually, handhold, guide, and influence our leadership of this transformation. And we start with practices. And I think we need some help. We need some help. Gerry, tell us how we can contact you. We need some guidance. And I think that's not expensive. Just a little of guidance from Gerry on how you're going to go into this journey because we need that. We cannot go back anymore pre-COVID. We have to move on. And in moving on, we need transformation and we start to transform our practices. And I think there is already that model, that formula of 7 pathways. And it is already actually, what do you call this? Tested, and there is an assessment. Why don't we look into that? And then I love what Gerry told us. This is only good. It's not discriminatory, but it's just actually your assessment. This is only good for those who would like to be excellent. That is right. Don't venture into anything when you don't have that intention or desire. So there, ladies and gentlemen, we were able to connect that need to transform, that need to be excellent, and that need on where we are going to start. We start with practices, follow the pathways, and that we need some help. And I think investors and people can help us. Thank you very much. This is Jesse Francis Rebustillo. Jus Mabalos.